Hi there! Welcome back to the channel. It's been a minute since I made a video because I got busy last week working and doing things with photography that were taking up all my time, editing and things like that. But I had a very amazing experience building this guitar. Of course, the builder, Toby shaped the body and routed it for me and set everything up beautifully. And then I ordered this pickguard, which was loaded with Eco 5. It's what they put on Fenders. It's a Fender trim system made by Ping. Fender staggered tuners. Fender logo plate. Fender trim system. Fender output jack. Yeah, Fender output jack. Everything is Fender, including the neck. But the body was made by builder Toby, and I think it's better than any Fender I've ever seen as far as the body goes, and it's just unbelievable. And this piece of wood is just insanely beautiful. The first second I saw it, I had to have it, and every day that goes by, it's just confirmed to me that it was something that was meant to be, and it's ignited, a lot of passion inside of me. So it's been a major success. The last thing I did was I put the strings on, and I've been playing NYXLs, what's it called? Yeah, the Diodero NYXLs 11 through 52, and I use 11 through 49 also. I think it's one of the ones they offer, but the 52 seems to be pretty cool because it makes the the E string a little fatter, and I'm going for like this big dynamic tone. So anyway, I did the strings, everything was good, and after I reset the neck, I guess so here's what happened. Since I did the strings, the only problem I was having, everything was perfect. You could tell it was going to be great, and everything was dropping in perfectly because Toby did such a great job and all that. So I knew that was good. I just knew that there would be mistakes that I would make from lack of experience. So I had originally put the neck in. I did it on the video, put the strings on, and some people would have liked the action like this, but it was just too low for me. And remember, my whole goal, if you've been watching any of these videos and heard me ranting or yapping about it, my main goal is to create a kind of like piano-like tone, like a super dynamic tone. That's why I have the action so high, and I'm making myself learn how to play better with higher action, simply because it just has a bigger sound. It has a certain type of sound that I've discovered, and I'll talk about that in a second. And I think it's kind of the key. It's like you can decide which way you want to go to get certain kind of sounds out of the Stratocaster. So with that in mind, I wanted to lift the action, and I knew something was wrong, and I thought it was because I couldn't get the saddles high enough. So that sent me on a bit of a goose chase, where I decided to get another set of saddles. I got some all-part saddles, and I don't know if you'll be able to see these in the video, but the all-part saddles are they're a little more robust looking than the Ping ones were, and they have a little groove. I don't know if it's showing up or not, but they have a groove that the string goes into, as opposed to just being a flat surface like the patent pending saddles. So these are the vintage patent pending, like bent steel saddles that the vintage way. Well, the all parts ones are the same, but they do put like a little bit of a U groove in there for the string to go in, especially for the heavier strings. Well, I took the three biggest ones out of the all parts pack and the three biggest ones out of the patent pending Ping pack, or whatever you call it, the ones that were the Fender ones, and I used all the big ones because I was trying to get the string up. Well, it really wasn't enough. I was still dragging on the fretboard. So eventually what I did, and I didn't want to mess up the nut because I knew that the nut was okay. It was staying in tune. It just was, too flat to the surface of the neck. And I knew everything was right with what Toby had done. I knew it was something I had done incorrectly, and I was just trying to figure out what it was. I thought it was the bridge and the angle of the bridge and the size of the saddles, how high they were. Well, I'd maxed those out, so I was in trouble. As far as like my setup, something was off, and I couldn't quite ascertain what it was. So I decided, let's just take these strings off, take the neck off again, and just reseat it. It might be a gap or something, it might be too high. And that's exactly what was going on. I just took it off. Nothing was unusual when I took the neck off. I looked at the holes. I hadn't done anything odd, like gone into the wood in the wrong spot and somehow drilled a new hole. None of that had happened. It was perfectly lined up with the screws and the holes and all that. So I just took it off, sat here for a second, reseated it. And you know, I just had a flash of thought. There is a chance that some of the shellac that I actually put some shellac in the neck pocket just to make it, I don't know, just like a tighter fit. There's a chance that that was what was blocking it. And that when I took it off and then went back in, it kind of like knocked some of that back or just made a different point of contact. That might be what it is. I just now solved it right here, I think. So anyway, when I screwed it back on, now it was a little lower. Put the first string on to test and I knew right away it was perfect. So, but it was like 2 days of torture because I couldn't figure out what was going on. It was driving me bonkers. And once that happens, my mind goes into this sort of loop where I'm trying to solve the problem like 24 hours a day. And it's absolutely mind-numbingly annoying. And so I talked to Toby about it, or actually texted him about it, and he said mainly his philosophy was, as soon as you hit the frustration point, you just set it aside for the day. Maybe take an hour off, maybe that's it for the day, don't come back until the next day. And I'm going to try to do that. I did it on a couple of other problems that came up, and I think it helped. Because my problem is I'm trying to do stuff that I'm not really capable of doing yet, but I don't care, and I'm just going to do it anyway. And so I get on this crazed mission, and it's a little neurotic. So I need to cool that out. But I think this kind of stuff helps me because it forces me to face some of these issues, you know. It does drive me crazy. I feel really relieved right now that it's over because it actually worked exactly like I wanted it to. My goal was to make it feel like this guitar, because this one was magical for me, and it still is, because this one opened the door, you know, to the world of Stratocaster. So I wanted it to feel like this, and it feels like that, but like so much better. Mainly, what I will say about the guitar, and this is thanks to Toby and thanks to this Fender neck. If you do a build like this, say you contact Toby and you have him build you a body and you get a Fender neck, I can assure you that you will have an amazing guitar. You'll have to make it amazing with your own blood, sweat, and tears, or have somebody else do it for you. But that is a really good combination. When you get a body like this dense wood, and I don't know what, I forgot what the Jenka is on Carina or on Limba. I can't remember how hard it is. There's all these things, but this wood, I'm telling you, I don't know what is going on. It's some kind of magical stuff. It really is. I mean, not that wood isn't anyway. I mean, really nice piece of mahogany. And when I'm banging on this, I'm not just indiscriminately banging. I'm listening for tone, and you know exactly what I'm talking about if you have a really nice guitar. And I'm feeling the vibration. And this thing is just so alive. It was what I was trying to do, but I knew for a fact that disparate parts coming together do not always create magic. I mean, it just doesn't, you know. But what happened here did. And the way I measure it is the amount of vibration that I'm getting. Like, I'm talking about a vibration that feels great. When it feels off, when the guitar is out of tune, you literally can't hardly even stand to play it because the vibration is unpleasant when it's out of tune. The vibration is unpleasant if things aren't right. And I'm talking about a real vibration. I'm not talking about metaphysics or anything. I'm talking about the guitar vibrating against my body and the sustain. And the only way to achieve it, I've decided after this build, is you have to have high action. Now, you can do all kinds of things with low action, but if you want, what I'm trying to achieve is this. Let me just show you on this E string. I want a really almost like a piano-like tone, and I want it to ring and sustain, and I want some space on it. And I think that the vintage saddles give you that. It's like this natural reverb air that Leo Fender somehow stumbled into, or whoever else designed the Stratocaster, they stumbled into this, and it's just absolute genius. So let me just show you what I'm talking about acoustically. Just try to hear the E string. Hopefully it'll pick up on this little mic. Let's see what happens. The note just stopped. I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but it's like this gorgeous, almost like bell-like tone. And in order to get that, I had to lift the strings up a certain height. That just won't happen if the string is too low and it's somehow catching a fret somewhere because of the downward pressure. Or if it's too low in the nut, you're not going to get that ring. Now I know a lot of people don't care about this ring, so this is only for people who are trying to get that 60s springy air tone, almost like, you know, the Byrds. I know they use Rickenbackers, but if you listen to their Strat stuff, it has the same thing. It's like some air there. And you listen to any old 60s record, the way Jimi Hendrix's guitar sounded, I think it has to do with these vintage saddles. That's what I've decided now. There's something happening here with the vintage. Look how crazy high this action is. Everybody will think I'm nuts, you know, probably scoff at that, because it is extremely high. And it, you know, it is harder to play like that, but I'm getting better at it. I was never a great player anyway. It wasn't like I was some super shredder that had my action down way low and I'm like missing some amazing, because I used to be going, you know, like this. That was never happening. I've always used the guitar as like rhythm lead, like a tool, and I learned enough to be able to make the noises I wanted to make. I want to get better, obviously, but I have to have the sound be, I guess sound is more important to me than technique, ultimately. So I'd rather make it uncomfortable to get the sound than make it comfortable and just make my amp sound better or whatever. For me, I still have not played this to an amplifier because I've been tweaking. So the main problem is that I had to reset this neck, right? I reset it, everything was perfect. Now the first little buzzy noises start appearing. So I'd like to be able to play a big D chord like Pete Townsend and have it ring out for days. That's my goal. You know, like have a bite and it's still going. You can still hear that one. That's what I really like. That's why I like Les Pauls. But Fenders do it too, and in a different kind of even maybe more magical way with that extra like springy reverb sound that's on top of it that just is a delight, you know, for your ears. So let's just check out this D chord. Let's see if it sounds good. Still going. Still vibrating like crazy. Wow, you can really hear it there. The 2 chord here, like the 2 note. Okay, so that's the sound I want. So I have to have this high action. I need these vintage saddles. Now, I was thinking about Eddie Van Halen. Eddie Van Halen, who was obviously a god or whatever, came from another world to be able to do what he did, to play like that. Even if you don't like Van Halen music or whatever, he did some crazy stuff. And one of the big innovations that excites me is what he would do with his instruments. I think he was really a big inspiration to me because I found an interview on YouTube, and I'll link it because it's amazing. If you have any interest in Eddie Van Halen or guitar building or whatever, what he was trying to achieve with his sound, it's in that interview. It's fantastic. But it was really inspiring to me. I heard it like, I don't know, like in 2007 or 8, and I just built my 18-watt, my Marshall 18-watt circuit. So I was just getting into it. I built a bunch of hi-fi stuff. When I say built, I did the best I could cobbling these things together. So around that time, I heard that interview, and I realized that he basically invented the Super Strat. You know, he shaved the neck down and got a flat radius like this one, because Strats usually have this 9.5 round radius, and it's kind of hard to do what he did with that, so he made it flatter and made it feel better for him. Mounted the pickups directly into the wood. That's a major innovation, because that's a big part of the Super Strat, is the pickups are, you know, directly into the wood. And then he you know, headed towards the Floyd Rose with his trim things. He blew the nut out so much, he would open up the nut so much that the strings would pop out. And that happened to me with this guitar. I had some problems with the rake angle on this, and it just totally freaked me out. But for him, all of his strings were doing that unless he held his finger down while he was playing. So it's really amazing. He developed some kind of crazy style because of what he was trying to do with the guitar. Because he wanted the guitar to do certain things that it really wasn't designed to do, he had to compensate for it with literally like his finger. I don't know which finger, but he was holding the guitar in the nut with one finger while he played with the other one. And he talks about it in another interview. It's a written one. I think it might have been a guitar player back in the 80s, where it's his thoughts, his words. You know, I'll link that as well. But you know, it separated him from the music and all the amazing riffs and all the #1 records or whatever, how many zillions of records he sold or whatever, or that Van Halen with David Lee Roth and later with Sammy Hagar sold like I don't know, gazillion records. They sold more with David Lee Roth, but they sold them fast with Sammy Hagar. But you know, the classic records were the David Lee Roth era, and that's when Eddie was doing all this crazy stuff. And a lot of people don't realize that I know the first album, maybe 1 and 2. He was actually using his favorite guitar from his early days for playing, which was a Gibson Explorer. He had a Sunburst first that had a P90. I mean, he had a gold top Les Paul that had P90s in it, and he chucked it out from the back, put humbucker in, like a secret humbucker. So he was always doing innovative stuff, like from the very beginning. And like, how horrific is it to picture a gold top P90 equipped Les Paul with a guy taking a screwdriver to the back of it with a hammer to put a humbucker in there. That was Eddie, and so that's really cool. So with that kind of thought in mind, it didn't even seem like stupid at all or wacky at all to like rob bigger saddles, because I think these bigger saddles give more tone. You get more. Right there, that natural reverb. And I cannot wait to hear it with this deluxe amp. And I'm thinking of getting a Mojo reverb unit, because this deluxe does not come with reverb. It is a reverbless deluxe from 1966. I bought this in Los Angeles, California for $700 on right off of Sunset Boulevard. And so what I want to do is go into this, and then you come out of the speaker output to the microverb. So you're splitting it not at the amp. You're not having to go to anything before you go to your amp, like a pedal or like a preamp type of thing. You go to it comes out of your speaker output, so it's just sharing the speaker output. It's got its own circuit in it. It looks like it would be amazing. So I would like to have some of my songs have that super Fender sound to them, almost towards like the surf thing with like an airy sound. And there's certain songs of mine that would fit that, whereas there's other songs where I will be plugging in with this guy into this girl into a 18 watt and this into an 18 watt. So I still have not heard this electrically, because if you know the channel at all, you know that my big trip is to get it right acoustically first before I even want to hear any of the electronics. Because once I start listening to electronics, I'm going to get obsessed with what I can do there, and that's like a different thing, you know, because I can tell with the guitar, I can tell what the distortion in the 18 watts is going to sound like just from sitting at home. I can already hear it. I know what it's going to sound like. So it's hard to explain. But anyway, I guess my whole thing that I took away from Eddie and him dying, me finishing this guitar literally the day he died. The last little thing I had all these little rattling noises, and these screws are not supposed to be way down because it's part of the sort of floating trim thing. You maybe put the one on the ends, the two ends, you kind of take those down, and in the 4 middle you can kind of bring up a little. Well, those can rattle, especially the way I play with the big right hand. I'm playing it like an acoustic guitar, you know, trying to get that projection. Staying in tune too, I'm stepping on the trim. And my secret for that, it shouldn't be a secret, is this tuning method. And I mean this stringing method, and the last video shows you how to do it. It's very simple and quick. I do it on every guitar now, whether it's trim or not. My guitars don't go out of tune anymore. I can use the trim, and I really can use the trim. So I was having these rattling noises. One of it is I think these screws were up too high, so I just kind of brought them down a little bit more flush. That rattling stopped. I had some other rattling over here. Turned out the output jack was a little loose because I hadn't even really thought about tightening it. So that went away. There was some rattling up here. A couple of these were loose, 1 or 2 of them. some rattling around here that just, after kind of doing some light nut adjustments, I went in with the files, and I'm talking, I didn't even create dust. It would just be like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth across the nut, just to open it up, make sure it was good. No noise there, everything's clean and good there. And if it sounds slightly out of tune, you can just kind of pick up on the bar and it all comes back in again. It's great. Okay, the vibration just now came to a stop after that last note. It's alive. It's just passing tone, you know, just like you want it to. So mission accomplished. Thank you to Toby Russell. He's the guy who built this. He's the guy who gave birth to this incredible body. And I really contend, I think if Eddie had seen this guitar, it would have stopped him for a second. I really believe that. I really think it has something special, not just because I own it. You know, I won't own it forever. I'll be gone. This thing will keep going. So I'm just hanging on to it for now. But anyway, it's amazing, and I can't wait to put it into an amp. And when I do, I'm going to document that on camera. The first time that I plug it in and play it, I want to have that camera on so that you guys can see what I hear and see what I hear and see at the same moment. If you happen to be watching these, or in the future, people are watching these, because I think more and more people are getting into this, you know, to build their own stuff. And I can tell you that these Fender necks are outstanding. This is an outstanding guitar neck. It feels like a custom, kind of like Gibson custom or like a Fender shop. I mean, it is like quality. Haven't done anything to it. I bet somebody else might take these frets down just the tiniest bit, because you can just feel them. Like, whereas this one I rolled it, so it's just smooth as butter. This one, but I don't care about that kind of thing. It makes me feel alive if I feel stuff on my hands, but it's like 1 millisecond away from being like perfect as far as like the frets go. And it's so humid here, I'll just wait a minute and I bet it'll swell. But I love this Palfero fretboard. Anybody who tells you that those aren't good is out of their skull. These are, I mean, there could be one that isn't good, but this one is fantastic. And it's what Stevie Ray Vaughan played. This guitar reminds me of Stevie Ray Vaughan's guitar. It looks like a nature relic guitar, and it reminds, like this business up here kind of looks like the paint that's left on that guitar, you know, before he died, what the state it was in. But the stuff on the back is just brilliant. But anyway, the one last noise I had, and I wanted to mention this because it was so annoying. So I had everything perfect, right? But I was hitting chords and getting this like really annoying like fly noise, like flies trapped in a jar. It's one of my favorite sounds. Not, right? Fucking terrible. So anyway, it sounded like flies in a jar or something. It was really unpleasant. And so I was trying to, is it these screws? Is it this? Is it that? I was like freaking out trying to adjust it. And finally I realized that the little spring, I bought some Fender springs, those little trim springs are like these little black springs. And I read online that and talked to this guy about it, and he said that eventually they just kind of get pulverized. That's why it's like there's black dust in there. And I always thought, oh, it was graphite powder. But then that made me think of graphite powder when I was thinking about that spring, because he was saying it looks like just black dust. Just gets pulverized from, you know, getting pushed down so much. And the way you can tell when the spring is dead is I like to have my arm kind of stiff and up, you know. Some guys like it floppy and hanging down. I like it up and stiff, upright. It's just the way I like a trim to be. It's kind of like a Bigsby, you know, where it's just there. And I don't want it to be floppy. I want it to have some tension. And I like it to be really tight, you know, going down. I don't want it to go brr, brr. I just like to feel some resistance. So when that goes away and it starts dropping, you know the screw's dead. I mean, the spring is dead, so you just drop another one in. But the spring, it's not like a perfect system. There's just a hole there and an oddly sized spring that just gets dropped in. It was rattling. And I remembered that happened with this one. When I got the spring, it started making noise, and I was like, how do you get around this? I really want the spring, but the noise is unacceptable. Graphite powder. So what I did is, and don't just get the thing and go poof, or it just goes everywhere. and you'll get too much. I actually did that with this guitar. And you can also put graphite on the nut. I'm not going to do that because I'm having no tuning issues, no issues with this nut. And I've been doing like ping tests with the nut versus my Tusk XL, and it sounds very similar. So for now, I'm done with the nut. Everything is working so great. No tuning issues, nothing. No sounds, no odd sounds, just beauty. So I'm leaving it exactly like it is. If I do upgrade the nut, I'll obviously document it. It'll be a Tusk or maybe a bone nut. I could have somebody cut me a bone nut too, because I don't know how to do that yet. So that was the last noise. But when you do it, I put it in a little like sushi soy sauce container for sushi. It was like this little kind of flat white thing, and I just put enough in there, like just a little bit, and then I kind of spooned it in with a toothpick. That way you can control the amount, because I'm telling you, it goes everywhere, and it's once it gets on stuff, it's hard to get it off. It'll get on your metal, it'll get everywhere, get all over the guitar, and you'll have to clean it off, and it'll get on your hands, your clothes. It's like a zillion pencils ground up. You can also, use a pencil. You could grind up a pencil, grind up the lead, drop that in, because it's graphite, not lead. So anyway, that got rid of that sound. So there's no bad sounds. It stays in tune with the trim, and just has a beautiful sound. Plays great. I'm going to get used to this higher action. It's slightly higher than this one, which I already thought was pretty high. And this one's pretty high too, because I want all these guitars to ring out. I can't stand that choked sound. And like I said, I know what it's going to sound like through an amp at home before I even get there. So there's no point in like plugging it in if I already know it's not right yet. And that was the other thing, is I saw an interview where Eddie talked about the guitar, and he didn't have a distortion pedal early. He didn't have any effects early on. It was just plugging in. I know he got into flangers and all kinds of crazy stuff later, but he kept it pretty simple even all the way to the end. His main thing was pushing the amp, which I learned from these lower wattage amps. You can turn them all the way up. The Fender Deluxe, the 18 watt by Marshall, the old Tweed amps by Fender, some Ampeg amps. If they're not, if it's below 50 watts, you can crank it and really get that tube power. You can really get your output tubes glowing, and you can get real distortion, not like something that you have to add in the circuit to give you like some fuzz. It's like naturally there, and it makes way more plunk. Like when you hit notes, you're getting way more. The amp is picking up way more of the action when you're pushing the amp as opposed to pushing through pedals first. Not that either one's better or worse. Just if you want that kind of thing, that's how you get it. And that was Eddie's trip. Eddie said you got to get your guitar right, and I only heard that this morning from him. It was an interview from about 10 years ago, and it was a promotion thing for one of those EVH guitars. I think when they went over to Fender, could have been, yeah, when they moved to Fender. So I'll try to find that link too. But he just talks about it's all right here. You got to get your tone here first. If you're chasing tone every which way after the fact, and your guitar itself, you haven't even considered what could be done there first, you're missing a big piece of it. So that was the inspiration I took from Eddie, besides all the amazing music, all the amazing riffs, the amazing persona, the charisma, the power, the beauty, the channeling he was doing. He's bringing something in from somewhere else, obviously. It doesn't sound like human created music. I mean, he was taking elements that he was letting flow through him. That's what I believe. I think he was connected to his guitar, and he was connected to love and creation and being creative by opening up his mind and his soul, and it just came through him, and we all got to experience it. One other little Eddie Van Halen or Van Halen anecdote I wanted to throw out there is for years my favorite American city is Los Angeles, California. I lived there for about 5 years. Couple of different times I've lived there, and I really like it just because it was like growing up in the 20th century and being like a kid watching television and stuff. I wanted to see where they made all those TV shows basically and live in that kind of disassociative world, and I love it. I think I've ended up finding out that there's so much more to it than that. You know, all these incredible neighborhoods filled with these amazing people from all over the world just doing amazing things. It's an incredible city, really. It's like it's so many different cities brought into one. And I spent a lot of time in Pasadena, which is not really in LA, but it's part of the LA experience. And I was training to do Pilates and the exercise. And so I was walking up and down Colorado Boulevard. There was a really amazing record store there called Canterbury. And the lady that owned it did not like rock and roll music. She liked classical music. So she would arbitrarily just put like 25 cents on these records. And so me and another guy, I figured out I had competition. And my friend Mark, our guitar player, he came out to LA and bought a bunch of records there. But I built most of my Elvis collection out of there, and I bought Van Halen records there. And what was amazing about buying Van Halen records in the city that they were from is that you could tell that they were like that city's band. Like Van Halen is Pasadena's band. And there's so many great stories. And so one day I found out there was another record store that was a little further down Colorado that I'd have to drive to. I couldn't walk to. Because I was doing this during breaks from my Pilates training. And so I drove down the street a little bit and went to this place, and I think it's called Puba. I could be wrong, but I think it's the same store because I looked at a little map. I'm bad about knowing where I am half the time, so I didn't know the name of the store. But I think it's called Puba, and it's off of Colorado, but it's like a house store, and it's a record store. And I'd never been in there, and so I walk in there, and Iggy Pop, I don't know if you ever lived in Pasadena, but they had a bunch of like personal Iggy Pop signed stuff, which was amazing. All these, and I bought an Iggy Pop record, I bought Soldier in there. And so, and it was a great store. They had like really cool books, like Feral House books, a lot of history of LA. If you have any interest in LA, punk rock, all the amazing history there, like bands like X. One of my favorites, the Germs, you know, the Derby Crash stories. So there's all that kind of history sitting in there. It's incredible. And then as I'm walking to the store, and we're talking about Pasadena here, this is where Eddie Van Halen went to high school and grew up and stuff. David Lee Roth lived in this massive like mansion that his father had. And I think he might have lived in he lived in the same area that Jack Parsons, the occult guy who was affiliated with Aleister Crowley and ended up blowing himself up, essentially, trying to make special effects for Hollywood. But he was an amazing propulsion expert. He worked for Caltech, and he has like I think he has something on the moon named after him. But anyway, he was a propulsion expert who also happened to practice the occult. So there's all kinds of great stories in Pasadena, all these amazing like things that have happened there. David Lee Roth lived right around there. And so when I go into Puba and up against a wall, they have this wall of pictures of basically it's like a Van Halen scrapbook on the wall. And it had pictures of like Alex Van Halen in high school. He was like on a merry-go-round with it's like his girlfriend. He's like holding hands. Oh no, it was either a merry-go-round or like a roller coaster. It was like a carnival or something. I mean, it was like true to life pictures out of the yearbook. And both guys in their little class pictures, Alex and Eddie, they both wore tuxedos in the picture, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it was like tuxedos, and Eddie had his like lion's mane hair with this tuxedo on in the picture, like grinning. It was really cool. And then they had a picture of David Lee Roth when he was a solo act, like he was like a folk guy, had like bell bottoms on, really long hair. He's holding like a big fat acoustic guitar, and he was like a folk guy, like almost like a James Taylor, you know? It was insane. And what else did they have? They had all kinds of pictures of them, like high school pictures of them at these parties where they were like on this stage and all these kids. I mean, it gives me chills to think about it. This big stage like set up in a field with kids standing there, big huge PA speakers. And guess what? Eddie's holding the Explorer. It's not a Super Strat yet. It was the Explorer, his favorite rhythm guitar, which he played rhythm on at least the first album, might be the first two. So anyway, it was a neat thing to experience. I'd never met any of the Van Halen camp, never stumbled into any of that, but I felt like I got a little piece of their world from walking in Puba that day. Something about being in Pasadena, which is their hometown, where it all kind of came together. They played all those parties there, those keg parties, and I knew where the neighborhood that Eddie lived in, so I could kind of tell where it all. I could just see it, you know. I could feel it, and it was like there. And so I felt a connection, and to know that Eddie was a tinkerer too, and he wasn't necessarily like a craftsman of any kind. He just wanted to achieve things with his guitar and with his sound, and the only way he knew to do it was with his own hands and with his own mind. So it's a huge loss. I equate it to the loss of David Bowie, in that we have all these symbols that all of us as men and women, but because I'm male, I'm kind of thinking of the male perspective and all the guys that I grew up with that loved Eddie Van Halen so much. And Van Halen, to describe it to millennial people or people that are younger, I'm 52. The way you listen to Van Halen was not like a YouTube link. It was in a Camaro, you know. You had to get in a Camaro. A Trans Am would do.